Hey, what's going on? My name's Paul, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a little productivity tip that will actually help you get 4 times as much stuff done that you normally would without working extra hours, without flipping your workflow on its head. This is a trick derived from a principle called Pareto's Law. This tip can actually help you in a lot of areas of life, not just work. It can help you study better. If you're an artist, it can help you create art faster and better. It can even help you read faster. But before launching into all that, I want to take a quick moment and thank my sponsor, Hub.Careers, for sponsoring this video. I got a chance to check out their site. They've got some really cool content, great tools for finding career advice, job hunting tips, etc. So go check it out if you enjoyed this video. There's lots more great stuff there. Okay, so today I'm going to launch straight into our topic and teach you how you can quadruple the amount of work you get done without radically changing your workflow and without putting in extra hours. The principle I'm talking about here is a pretty simple one that was derived from a pretty complex idea by Vilfredo Pareto. So Pareto was an Italian economist who was born in the mid-1800s and lived until the 1920s. He did a lot of stuff in his lifetime. In his heyday, he was an economist, a sociologist, he was a civil engineer, he's a philosopher, a whole bunch of things, but he's probably best known and best remembered for Pareto's Law, also known as the rule of 80-20. Basically, this law makes the claim that roughly 80% of outputs from any given function come from roughly 20% of inputs. And that's actually really crazy when you think about it. In a lot of cases, this is something that we sort of intuitively know already. Like, how many times have you spent 8 minutes laboring over an email that you actually wrote in 2 minutes and then you send it anyway without making any significant changes? And if you think back on last week and you're really honest with yourself, you can probably see that you got the lion's share of your work done in the office last week from about 20% of the time that you spent in there. I remember when the reality of this effect really first struck me. I was a senior in college and I'd stayed up really late the night before a paper was due, and I totally spaced the fact that I had to do this paper. I woke up the next morning and I kind of panicked because I had an hour before the class and I hadn't even started the paper. It's supposed to be 2 pages long. It's supposed to be a creative nonfiction story from my past. So I didn't have to do any research for it, but I did have to compose a good story, get it together, and finish it off, and still have time to go print it off and bike to class. So I ended up going into this frenzied work mode, and I managed to get the paper done well within the time constraints to get it turned into class and printed off just fine. Ever after that, I started intentionally putting off the papers that I would have to do for that class once a week until the day they were due. Once I knew I could get them finished, I would just cram them in the 2-hour gap before the class. This did a couple things for me. One, I consistently still got good grades on those papers. The quality didn't really suffer using that method versus when I would spend 4 hours, 5 hours the night before on a paper. But secondly, this actually freed up a bunch of time in my evenings for that semester. So I wasn't wasting my time on Monday nights writing a paper that I was half into, half distracted for. When I was working, I was focused and I was working hard. The really neat thing about Pareto's Law is it doesn't just stop there with how you work. It actually is a naturally occurring phenomenon that's seen all over. When Pareto was researching this law, he noted that about 20% of the landowners in Italy, his home country, accounted for about 80% of the property owned. I did some quick browsing on Wikipedia and found that about 82.5% of global income, according to global GDP, is accounted for by the top quartile, or about the top 20% of the richest people in the world. Even Microsoft has said that roughly 80% of the system errors that it has can be traced to 20% of the reported bugs that they get. Seriously, you should go check out the Wikipedia page on Pareto's Law. It's pretty crazy how many things fall right into line with this law. There's even a statistic that 20% of the world's criminals account for 80% of the world's crime, and 20% of hospital patients utilize 80% of hospital resources. But this is more than just a weird pattern that we can see in nature or a cool little facet from an economist a long time ago. This is an actual usable principle that we can harness and start using to impact our productivity. Pareto's Law says that the default in nature is for 20% of the inputs to yield 80% of the outputs, but it doesn't put a cap on that. The law is not saying that only 20% can yield 80%. So if you can fully command each quartile of your workflow, you can hypothetically quadruple the amount of output that you have for the same amount of input hours. That might feel a little abstract and impractical, but I'll give an example of how this works. So let's take emailing, for example. Email is something that pretty much everybody does on a day-to-day, and a lot of people would agree that email takes up a ton of time. It can be a real productivity killer. The reason emailing takes up so much time is that you have to open a browser, go to gmail.com, wait for it to load for a second. You have to find the conversation that you were looking for. You have to read back on the context to make sure you remember everything correctly. And then finally, you type out your response and you hit reply, or you figure out what actionable you need to do based on that conversation. Most of the things that take time about email are actually just getting you set up to do the actual act of emailing. The emailing itself takes very little time. So a strategy would be, rather than emailing throughout the day, so every time you get an email, you're opening your inbox, you're checking the email, sending the reply, whatever, don't even open your inbox until 4 in the afternoon. And then when you open it, address all the emails at once while you're in the zone, so to speak. You've got all the information right in front of your eyes, everything's fresh in your memory. A lot of people's first instinct when they hear that is to say, oh, I can't not reply to emails throughout the day, it's crucial. But is it actually? I understand there are a few jobs where absolutely you have to address emails, it's super urgent. But for most jobs, how bad of an impact would it actually have if you waited until the end of the day and crammed all your emailing into 1 hour or even 1/2 hour, rather than letting it overlap into a bunch of your other tasks and disrupt your focus flow? For example, if you work at a waterworks company and you're supposed to be designing new plumbing for a building, and you're in the middle of drawing up a schema for the building, but then you get an email, all of a sudden your workflow is disrupted, your focus is broken, you go address the email, and like I was saying, it takes a couple minutes to boot up, to get in the zone, type the email, you send it, but then you come back and you have to re-enter the focus that you had for that floor plan. It'd be so much faster if you just knocked the whole plan out and then went and addressed all the emails rather than trying to jump back and forth and juggle them. The time that you're readjusting focus is where you're losing time through the cracks. I even noticed this when I started picking up reading again recently. I had some time free up and I was able to pick recreational reading back up, which I used to love to do, but I felt that I didn't have time for anymore. Ever since I've been practicing Pareto's Law, I've noticed that I've been able to finish things fast enough that I have time for stuff like reading again. But as I was reading, I thought, well, what if this applied directly to reading as well? And sure enough, as I was reading, I found that I was reading in a conversational voice, so I was only allowing myself to read as fast as I could speak the words in my mind. And that doesn't make any sense. Everybody knows you can read faster than you can talk. So I started focusing on really just reading the words as fast as I could read the words. And not so fast that I was missing words and jumping over chunks of paragraphs, but just fast enough that it was 2 or 3 times a conversational speed. And sure enough, my comprehension was still great, I didn't miss anything, but it drastically sped up the amount that I could read. So this law spans all sorts of arenas. Hopefully you've heard something here that's helpful to you. I know it's certainly been helpful for me in my workflow. Again, if you enjoyed this video, go to hub.careers and check out the cool stuff that they've got. Tons of great content, advice, job search tips, all sorts of things. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll be doing more videos here soon, and until then, I'll see you later.